Recently, 3 Chinese nationals were arrested in the country of Georgia. They were suspected of illegally purchasing 2 kilograms of uranium at a value of 400,000 US dollars. They reportedly planned to secretly transport the uranium through Russia to China. This case highlights the increasing risks associated with mining activities along the Chinese Communist Party's Belt and Road Initiative. The incident has quickly drawn international attention. According to the State Security Services of Georgia, they were arrested in the capital, Tbilisi, on October 25th. The uranium they were carrying has been classified as nuclear material, though details regarding its isotope, purity, or intended use, as well as the motivation behind the purchase, have not been disclosed. The deputy head of the State Security Service of Georgia explained that one of the suspects brought experts interested in purchasing uranium to Georgia. He began actively searching for radioactive material across the country. This individual was in the country illegally. The other 2 suspects coordinated the plan remotely from within China. During the investigation, the residences and communications were searched. Local media reports indicate that the suspects were identified and arrested by law enforcement during illegal transaction negotiations. Their apartments in Tbilisi and Batumi were also searched. Local media outlet One TV later broadcast a video released by authorities showing the arrest of 3 suspects. The faces of the suspects were blurred, but it was later clear that there were 2 men and 1 woman. The investigation is currently being conducted under Article 230 of the Georgian Criminal Code, which carries a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. Some netizens from mainland China have criticized the suspects, questioning whether they were willing to risk their lives for money. As a nuclear power, China's involvement in such activities is often linked to economic motivations, black market trade, or geopolitical factors. Experts note that such cases highlight the security and transnational nature of nuclear material trafficking networks. Although Georgia does not produce nuclear weapons, its historical context and geographic advantages make it a high-risk area for nuclear material smuggling. This case serves as a reminder to the international community that the security of nuclear materials is not only a scientific and energy issue, but also crucial to the enforcement of global non-proliferation efforts. Currently, Georgian authorities continue to expand the scope of their investigation, focusing on tracking the channels, financial flows, and potential international networks involved. No comments have yet been made by Chinese or Russian officials regarding the case. This highlights the presence of a nuclear black market in the southern Caucasus region, including Georgia, Russia, and the Central Asian border. Media outlets such as the Washington Post and Breitbart have linked it to the legacy of nuclear material smuggling from the former Soviet Union. This case is not an isolated incident. Over the past few decades, the country has witnessed several serious incidents related to the illegal trade of nuclear materials. For example, in 2019, 2 Georgian nationals were arrested for illegally possessing and attempting to sell uranium-238. Investigators reportedly seized a total of 40.2 grams of uranium-238. It was reported that the 2 suspects attempted to sell the uranium for $2.8 million. In July 2025, a Georgian and a Turkish national were arrested for allegedly attempting to sell uranium worth $3 million, which could have been used to manufacture deadly bombs. Uranium plays an irreplaceable strategic role in the energy sector. Uranium-235 and uranium-238 are 2 significant isotopes, with uranium-235 being especially prominent as it is an essential nuclear fuel for both nuclear power generation and the production of nuclear weapons. Producing a basic fission nuclear bomb typically requires about 15 to 25 kilograms of weapon-grade highly enriched uranium. Currently, approximately 2/3 of the world's known uranium resources are concentrated in countries such as Australia, Canada, Kazakhstan, Namibia, and Russia. In contrast, China has a surprisingly small amount of uranium resources. It is estimated that China has only 68,000 tons of extractable uranium, less than 1% of the global total. Moreover, most of the proven uranium deposits are located in regions such as Guangdong, Hunan, Inner Mongolia, and Xinjiang. However, these deposits either have low grades, meaning they contain little uranium, or are buried deep, making extraction difficult. Beijing has strategically focused on the development of uranium resources for 3 main reasons. Firstly, China's nuclear arsenal is undergoing a critical period of modernization. Many older nuclear warheads need to be decommissioned and dismantled, while the production of new warheads requires a large amount of uranium. At the same time, as the Chinese Communist Party's ambitions for global dominance continue to grow, China is increasing its stockpile of nuclear warheads, raising the demand for uranium even further. Secondly, China is actively advancing the construction of nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and more advanced nuclear submarines. These large nuclear-powered systems require uranium to provide the necessary energy support. Lastly, uranium is a key material for nuclear power generation, with approximately 60% of nuclear power plants worldwide using uranium-235 as fuel. China's nuclear power station construction has entered a new peak period. Currently, the Chinese Communist Party has 56 nuclear power units in operation, 30 under construction, and 15 awaiting approval, bringing the total to over 100 units. As uranium is a critical raw material for nuclear power plants, its demand is expected to increase in tandem with a growing number of nuclear power stations. The United States is the largest consumer of uranium, accounting for 60% of global uranium consumption, followed by China, Russia, and France. Since the last century, France has come close to fully relying on nuclear energy, with approximately 80% of its electricity derived from uranium. The United States, the United Kingdom, and South Korea plan to significantly increase their nuclear energy capacity by 2050. Major companies such as Microsoft and Amazon are also investing in nuclear energy, focusing on advanced technologies, data centers, and artificial intelligence systems. In contrast, in 2020, China's uranium demand approached 10,000 tons, while domestic production was only 1,885 tons, resulting in a shortfall of over 80%. By 2025, the demand for uranium from China's nuclear power sector is expected to reach 13,000 tons, but the domestic self-sufficiency rate will only be 15%. Moreover, uranium is a strategic resource. What if there's a supply disruption one day? China's nuclear power stations could be forced to reduce output or even shut down. Due to the scarcity of uranium, China is heavily reliant on imports. Around 60% of its uranium imports come from Kazakhstan, about 30% from Namibia, with a remainder primarily sourced from Russia and other countries. However, Chinese nuclear power companies face significant pressure if there are fluctuations in the international market or if uranium-producing countries tighten exports. This could be due to factors such as the Russia-Ukraine war, when global uranium prices surged by 30%. As global geopolitical conflicts continue and the China-US trade war escalates, along with the increasing occurrence of black swan events, the importance of uranium has become more pronounced. In response, the Chinese Communist Party has begun a global effort to secure uranium. The strategy adopted by China includes, first, quietly stockpiling. In 2024, China established a strategic reserve system for uranium resources, aiming to ensure at least 6 months of uranium fuel supply during critical times. Secondly, China is employing the fuel cycle approach. In fact, 95% of the uranium and plutonium in spent nuclear fuel from power plants remains unused. Through reprocessing technology, these waste materials can be turned back into fuel. Thirdly, China is strategically positioning itself in the global uranium resource market. By acquiring stakes in uranium mines in countries like Kazakhstan, Namibia, and Pakistan, China is gradually building a global supply chain network for uranium resources. It's estimated that by 2030, the uranium output from overseas equity will surpass 35% of the total imported quantity. Uranium is a highly sensitive strategic resource, and there are significant political risks associated with international cooperation in this area. Under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor Framework, Chinese companies have secured multiple mineral development contracts, including those for uranium, gold, copper, and rare earth minerals. However, some of these contracts have been accused of violating international law and Pakistan's constitution. Since 2020, reports have indicated that the Pakistani federal government illegally granted more than 2,000 exploration and mining licenses to Chinese companies, including for uranium mining. The Gilgit-Baltistan region of Pakistan is particularly rich in uranium deposits, though specific data has not been publicly disclosed. These minerals can be used for nuclear energy, space technology, and weapon manufacturing. The Chinese Communist Party views the region as a strategic pivot in the China-Pakistan economic corridor, strengthening its influence through infrastructure projects and mining investments. However, China's aggressive and exploitative mining practices in Pakistan has sparked environmental and nationalistic backlash within the country. Chinese companies have been accused by local lawmakers, activists, and international observers of operating illegally, lacking transparency, and facilitating the smuggling and export of strategic minerals such as uranium. In April, protests erupted in Skardu. In opposition to the government's decision to lease lithium and uranium mines to Chinese companies, local residents protested and expressed concerns that the mining of lithium and uranium would damage the mountainous ecosystem, pollute water sources, and affect agriculture and livestock. Hundreds of people, including villagers, students, religious leaders, and local lawmakers, participated in the protests, which lasted for several days in Skardu city and surrounding mining areas. Protesters pointed out that the extensive mining of these resources, along with their secretive export, had led to environmental destruction, water pollution, and land degradation. Some protesters shouted, "The mountains are bleeding and our children are starving," expressing their anger over resource exploitation and their dire living conditions. The demonstrators also called for the international community to pay attention to the region's resource sovereignty issues. Local communities have periodically organized protests regarding land expropriation, environmental destruction, and unfair employment distribution related to the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor projects. Chinese companies such as China Road and Bridges Corporation and Shahzad International, a local Pakistani company collaborating with China, have been specifically pointed at in these protests. In March 2024, residents of Pakistan's Karkalti region protested against foreign mining companies, accusing them of smuggling uranium. Local reports indicate that Chinese miners were illegally extracting and exporting uranium ore from the uranium-rich Kalkati village in the Gizar district. In September 2024, a member of the Gilgit-Baltistan legislature publicly accused Chinese companies of excessively exploiting uranium, leading to large quantities of the mineral being smuggled to China, with the Pakistani government turning a blind eye. He emphasized that these actions were carried out without legal procedures and involved thousands of tons of minerals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. As of October 2025, the issue continues to escalate. The Pakistan Mining Investment Forum is pushing for more leases, but local protests persist. Legislators are calling for free, prior, and informed consent, FPIC, and local revenue sharing. Without reform, this could lead to further conflicts, similar to the protests in Balochistan against the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which even saw a bomb attack on a convoy carrying 23 Chinese engineers. Recent discussions on platforms such as X have emphasized resource exploitation rather than development, questioning the sustainability of the China-Pakistan all-weather relationship. After the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine war, China's overseas uranium development entered a new phase. Especially in Kazakhstan, a small Central Asian country that produces over 40% of the world's uranium. In 2025, Kazakhstan's third nuclear power plant will eventually be constructed by a Chinese company. While importing uranium may seem simple, it carries significant risks. In December 2024, according to Reuters, China successfully acquired 49% of the shares in Kazakhstan's Zhiretsnoye uranium mine from Russia's Uranium One group. At the same time, China also took over a 30% stake in the Kurasan-U joint venture, transferring it to China Uranium Development Corporation, a subsidiary of the China General Nuclear Power Group. Upon completion of these transactions, China will replace Russia as Kazakhstan's largest uranium mining development partner. Many may wonder why China is willing to transfer such significant uranium mine shares to China. The reason is simple: financial strain. Russia's current economic situation is tense, and it urgently needs cash to fill the gaps. China General Nuclear Power Group's mining division is currently the only publicly listed company solely focused on uranium mining. It operates 4 uranium mines, all located in Kazakhstan. In 2023, its equity production reached 1,277 tons, with a potential to increase to 1,700 tons in the future. However, for China, the Central Asian uranium market presents both a stable supply strategic safeguard and multiple risks. Specifically, risk events could be triggered by both internal and external factors. First, with the U.S. ban on Russian Uranium Imports Act taking effect in 2024, the U.S. is shifting its focus to Central Asia and increasing scrutiny of nuclear transactions with China, such as through the Export Administration Regulations, or EAR. If the U.S. determines that China is indirectly purchasing Russian uranium through Central Asia, secondary sanctions limiting Kazakhstan's uranium exports to China could be imposed. Second, despite Russia transferring the Zarechnoye mine shares to China in 2024, it still controls 44% of the global uranium enrichment capacity and some mining rights in Central Asia. If the China-Russia relationship deteriorates due to conflicting interests, Russia could impose indirect restrictions on China via Kazakhstan. Third, Kazakhstan is leveraging its uranium power for multilateral balancing. In 2025, it's requiring foreign companies to process uranium locally and deepening cooperation with France's Orano and Canada's Cameco. If Chinese investments fail to meet local employment or environmental standards, they may face a cancellation of leases or higher taxes. Fourth, the use of the in situ leaching method for mining uranium has led to contamination of Central Asia's groundwater. The protests in Skardu, Pakistan in 2025 demonstrated that similar sentiments could spread throughout Central Asia, posing a threat to project security. Anti-China protests occur almost annually in Kazakhstan, demonstrators opposing the Chinese Communist Party's economic expansion in the region. If the Kazakh government fails to address environmental and nationalist issues, Central Asia could become an unexploded bomb. Moreover, many of the world's top 10 uranium mines have been in operation for decades, and declining ore grades are increasing mining costs. In July 2019, China National Nuclear Corporation spent 740 million yuan to purchase a 68.6% stake in the Rossing uranium mine in Namibia from global mining giant Rio Tinto, thereby gaining control of the mine. This mine is the sixth largest uranium mine in the world and the second largest open-pit uranium mine. However, the Rossing mine has been in operation for many years and is expected to be depleted by 2036. According to a research report by Guosen Securities, in 2023, the top 5 uranium producers by company were CAP, Orano, Cameco, CGN, and Uranium One, with China National Nuclear Corporation ranking 6th globally and second in China, just behind China General Nuclear Power Group. It's worth noting that Chinese companies' overseas resource acquisitions have raised international concerns and caution regarding China's resource diplomacy. As the demand for electricity from large AI models and data centers rises rapidly, nuclear energy is being reintegrated into technological strategic priorities. In other words, AI is not only changing search and writing processes, it is also altering the logic of energy. According to Goldman Sachs, the demand for AI computing power in data centers has driven global electricity consumption growth to 2.5%, far exceeding the average growth rate of the past decade. Combined with factors such as the widespread adoption of electric vehicles, it is expected that by 2030, the global base load power gap will reach 83,000 terawatt hours. In recent years, the Chinese Communist Party has ambitiously pursued the expansion of its AI plus energy strategy. On September 23rd, the 13th Modern New State-Owned Enterprises seminar was held in Hangzhou, focusing on the integration of AI and energy. The conference highlighted the role of central state-owned enterprises as a main force in fields such as nuclear power. It also called on companies like China National Nuclear Corporation and China General Nuclear Power Group to develop AI-driven scenarios for nuclear power management, smart operations and maintenance, and fuel optimization, with the goal of improving efficiency by 10 to 15% and reducing operating costs by 5 to 8%. Over the next 5 years, the Chinese State-Owned Assets Supervision and Administration Commission plans to invest 50 billion RMB in AI plus energy projects, with approximately 30% of this funding, around 15 billion RMB, allocated to nuclear power. The focus will be on small modular reactors and small nuclear power plants. The deep integration of AI and nuclear power is greatly changing the development ecosystem of the nuclear power industry. The expansion path led by SASAC for state-owned enterprises includes integrating key sectors such as nuclear power, oil, and electricity into AI-driven intelligent framework. This strategy aims to enhance efficiency and control costs, thereby strengthening the state's dominance in the energy system. However, without institutional checks and balances and transparency, this top-down main force model risks becoming a political tool rather than delivering social welfare, making true progress difficult to achieve.